I want to come back to Administrator Sobeck on follow-up. Again, our understanding of the NMFS proposal for CVP operations before the recent spate of rains here, we're thankful for those. Did it indeed call for delaying diversion by growers, the senior water rights holders, until June 1 this year? Whether it's taking that aggressive move towards June 1 as opposed to, I think, May 1 last year?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning of your question, sir.
The NMFS proposal before this recent spate of rain that we're all thankful for, my understanding was it was going to move from, I think, a May 1 action last year to a June 1 action of not allowing diversions, not because there's not water, but because of a cold water regime you're looking for. Was that your plan up until the rains occurred recently, to not allow diversions till June 1?
I think the plan was to not allow diversions until June 1 unless there was sufficient storage in Shasta to satisfy the
So
later
had we not gotten an
later
incredible amount of
releases.
rain, you would have moved it back to June 1 from May 1, like previous year's practice.
I think that based on the additional rain, we will be
Had we not
re-examining
had the
that
rain,
date.
you wouldn't have allowed the water to flow.
I
If it had
believe
been
that's
only
correct.
3 million acre feet, say in Shasta 3.2, something like that, instead of the 4.1 number, you would not have allowed it up till June 1.
I believe that's correct after having lost almost the entirety of the last 2 years of salmon runs because of temperature.
What if that dam
issues.
wasn't there that had any water to store through a 4-year drought? You know, again, we're down now to the luxury of temperature. We're down to the luxury of temperature versus having water to release to begin with if the dam wasn't there.
That would be a completely different circumstance if the dam were not there. I agree with that.
Okay, so where's the credit come for people being involved in order to kind of make a happy medium for everybody? June 1, I mean, you're talking senior water rights holders here. When do you fear their lawsuits for taking away their senior water right for what to them is a very outrageous move back of their water diversion to June 1, 6 weeks or more into their crop year?
We are trying to balance water rights and the legal rights of water users and the legal obligations under the Endangered Species Act. And
The Endangered Species Act doesn't say anything about water temperature. Okay, let me jump to Mr. Kurth here. Under the biological opinion, here's something you may have heard already in the past. Under the biological opinion, 12 degrees centigrade is believed to initiate spawning activity and the probable presence of larval delta smelt in the south and central delta. Conditions historically associated with the peak of spawning and hatching will likely occur over the next few weeks. We believe eggs and juvenile delta smelt emulate free-floating particles in the water column. We believe the higher the model delta outflow, meaning pumping, will reduce the risk of entrainment to larval delta smelts in the very near term. Does that sound like a familiar line that may have come from your department?
Those are the factors that we consider. I don't know if that's a precise
Okay, I'll
quote.
answer for you. It's a portion of a determination issued by Fish and Wildlife that drastically reduced water supply based on what it appears to be a hunch. You don't even have the data on what fish are there or what the effects are. In the meantime, 82,000 CFS flow past the city of Sacramento, and only 5,000 up to 7,000 are being allowed to be taken out at the most ideal time. San Luis Reservoir is at approximately 51%, I understand. Now, we could be pumping that water out of there until that's full. And by the time, if we top that off and Army Corps or DWR or somebody doesn't blow it on Shasta Dam and Lake Oroville, we could fill all these reservoirs to the top and then, dump everything else, right? You'd have, at least we'd be impounding what we could have. So the determination you made on this, though, was March 9th. Again, it's based on a hunch. Now, how can you look people in the eye and say that we're doing everything we can in the Delta based on believed to be spawning activity, a probable presence of larvae, something will likely occur, we believe this, we believe that. How can you look people in the eye and say that we're not doing everything we can to store water based on hunches?
We use the best scientific available information we have to develop our biological opinion and the reasonable and prudent actions to avoid jeopardy, and that's our best scientific opinion.
You're going so far extended to avoid possible, believed, perceived jeopardy that you're not managing the resource very well. You're causing the resource to not be managed very well. What do you say to that?
I'd say that we're doing the best that we can with the available scientific information to issue an opinion that avoids
The
jeopardizing.
science are guesses. These are guesses. You're not even out there with any kind of data to say how many fish there is or isn't, or what the turbidity is, or this or that or the other. These are hunches. How do you justify that to the people?
There's a great deal of real-time monitoring that goes on, but there are difficulties in sampling this particular species, and so we use the best scientific information available in formulating our biological opinion and the reasonable and prudent actions.
Well, how come that boomerang doesn't go the other direction? The best science based on very little information would allow more pumping, especially during these ideal times when we could top off San Luis Reservoir with a maximum of 11,000 CFS or whatever the pump capacity is. Why can't we boomerang in that direction once in a while?
If the action would jeopardize the continued existence of the species, and we don't have reasonable and prudent alternatives, the Endangered Species Act simply does
Did not
allow
Mr.
us.
Costa a while ago mention that the action level is 56 incidental take, and it only has reached a number of 3 or 12 based on a particular multiplier factor of 12? You're way below the bar. We have higher flows than we've seen in at least 4 years that we could be taking action on. Now, it isn't adding up for you. Sir? Father time, yep. Would you like to answer that?
Well, I mean, my answer is the same, is based on our sound professional judgment and the science we have available, we've put in place reasonable and prudent actions, alternatives to avoid jeopardizing the continued
What do you say
existence
to
of the
Mr.
species.
Costa's constituents that are getting 0% based on prudent hunches?
There is a great deal of other concern that is certainly legitimate, but what the Endangered Species Act asks the Fish and Wildlife Service to do
Endangered
is...
Species Act doesn't specify pumping or turbidity or any of this stuff. It wasn't written that way. These are opinions that have been based on a lot of fluff, and there's much frustration about that.